Poppy Playtime 4, the nightmare that wasn't meant to be the most hyped horror game of the year. Or so we thought for months. Poppy Playtime 4 was building up insane levels of hype. Teasers showed new, terrifying monsters, a darker storyline, and gameplay mechanics never seen before in the franchise. Fans were ready for the ultimate horror experience. And then the game dropped. What followed was one of the worst game launches in horror gaming history. A buggy, unplayable mess. The second players booted up Poppy Playtime 4. They knew something was off. Constant crashes. Some players couldn't even get past the title screen without their game freezing. Others reported hard crashes that forced a full system reboot. Broken animations. Monsters meant to chase the player would either T-pose, clip through walls, or, in some cases, just float in mid-air, doing nothing. Game-breaking glitches. Players got stuck in unreachable areas. Cutscenes refused to trigger. And sometimes the enemies wouldn't even spawn, making the game impossible to complete. At one point, the game's biggest enemy, the hollow prototype, was supposed to jump scare the player in a dark hallway. Instead, it just stood there staring. No attack, no movement, nothing. It didn't take long for players to start memeing the game online, calling it Poppy Playtime 4, Buggy Nightmare Edition. The monsters were more hilarious than scary. What was supposed to be the scariest cast of villains yet turned out to be unintentionally hilarious. The hollow prototype, meant to be the ultimate threat, but thanks to bad AI, it sometimes ran in circles or even got stuck indoors. Players joked that it was the easiest final boss in horror game history. Stitch Face Freddy, a creepy, stitched-up animatronic that was supposed to hunt you using sound detection. But due to a coding error, he would only move if the player jumped. This led to hilarious gameplay where players would bunny hop their way through the level while Freddy awkwardly followed. Bunzo 2.0, a terrifying upgrade to the original Bunzo Bunny, except he had no attack animations. Instead of chasing the player, he would just stand still and scream. Some players modded the game just to fix the enemies so they would actually work. Paywalls and greedy microtransactions. As if the bugs weren't bad enough, the developers made the worst decision imaginable. They locked key content behind paywalls. Want the true ending? Pay $9.99. Exclusive horror skins? $4.99 each. Skip a broken level? $14.99. Even worse, the base game was already full price, but half the features were locked behind DLCs. Players who didn't pay extra couldn't even access certain areas or bosses. At this point, Steam reviews were flooded with angry complaints. This isn't a horror game, it's a scam. I paid $40 for a broken demo. Fix your game before selling DLC. The game's Metacritic score dropped to an embarrassing 2.1 out of 10. Developer silence and fake promises. With thousands of negative reviews, fans expected the developers to respond quickly and start fixing the game. Instead, nothing. For weeks, the developers stayed silent. No updates, no patches, just radio silence. Then, after endless backlash, they finally tweeted, "We're working on improvements. Stay tuned." Players waited. And waited. But nothing changed. Instead of fixing the game, the developers started banning negative reviews on Discord and Reddit. They ignored refund requests and refused to acknowledge the biggest issues. That's when the fanbase officially turned against them. Final chapter. The death of a franchise? Poppy Playtime 4 had everything it needed to be a legendary horror experience. Instead, it became a cautionary tale about rushing a game before it's finished, ignoring the fan base, prioritizing money over quality. Now, players aren't even excited for a potential Poppy Playtime 5. They just want refunds. And as for Playtime Co., well, it seems the real horror story wasn't in the game. It was how the developers destroyed their own masterpiece.